We're learning the third Sikha of Parshas Acharei, Chelek Yitzayin, on page 193. Today's shir is being learned by the Nishmas of Yosef ben Yamin ben Rabbi Menashe Koltman. This is a Sikha that will discuss the subject of Chuva. And along with Chuva comes the union of Vidui, confession, and also Kapara, the atonement as a result. The Rebbe will explain what the essence of Chuva is, primarily based on what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya in Igeres HaTshuva. Regarding the confession that the Kohen Gadol says when he sends off the Soira Mishtaleach, this is the goat that was sent off to be thrown off the mountain of Azazel. Zok the Pasik, so the Pasik describes the confession as follows: that he would confess for all the sins of the Yidden. So first it uses the term Avaynes, then it says was called Pish'ayim L'chol Chatoisam. Three different expressions regarding the sins of Yidden. And from them learned up Rab Meir. From these three expressions, the Pasuk says in this order, Rab Meir learns out, as the Seder from Vidui is the order when the Kohen confesses the Averis of the Yidden, Keitzad Mitzvah. So he says Avisi, Pashati, L'chatasi. The order is first Avisi, then Pashati, and then Chatasi. And we'll see in a moment right here what the difference between these different levels of sins are. The Chachamim disagree with Rab Meir, because they say as follows: Avoinais elo as adainis. The term avoinais refers to premeditated sins, or something that a person does knowingly, intentionally. Pshayim elo amardim. Pshayim refers to averis that a person does despite, or a person does as a rebellion. So it's even worse. On chatasam elo ashgagis. The expression of chatasam or achet refers to something that a person does unintentionally, inadvertently. So therefore, he says, what's the right order? Once a person confesses for those averes that were done b'mezid, or were done as a rebellion, would he then have to go and confess even for those averes that were done inadvertently? So that he wonders on the opinion of Rabbi Meir regarding the order. Nor they say that is. So therefore the Chachamim say the order when a person confesses, and in this case when the Kohen Gadol confesses, is Chatasi, V'avisi, Upashati. I sinned, referring to the Averis done b'sheigig, then b'mezid, and then Pashati, the ones that are the Averis a person has done, rebelling against Hashem. Shayches, then Vidui, V'syeder Id, is V'syeder, that is, V'syeder is Nuchuyev to Zogin ben Er to Tshuva. Now in connection to the Vidui that every individual is obligated when he does Tshuva, Paskin the Rambam, so the Rambam Paskins as follows: Keitzad Mizvadim, how does one confess? Oymer, he says, Ona Hashem, Chatasi, Avisi, Pashati Lefanecha. So he says it in the order that the Chachamim say. First a Chet, and then Oven, and then a Pesha. V'sisi kach v'kach, and I did as follows: V'areni chamti, I regret what I've done. U'boishti, I'm embarrassed by my saying, my actions. And I'll never return to this again. This is the primary nusach, the words that a person says when he's confessing for his averis. But further there, the Rambam brings and says, regarding the vidui, the confession, every year is obligated to say on Yom Kippur, the vidui, the confession, that it's a custom of all Yidden to say, Aval anachnu chatanu kulanu, we have all sinned, v'hu ikra vidui. Saying this, just this, that we have all sinned, using the term chatanu, that is the primary vidui. In Torah, und Ramah, u'b'loshen von Alter Rebbe, Shulchan Aruch. This is the way it's paskin in Torah and Ramah, and the Rebbe here quotes what the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch: Im Oma stam chatasi, Yotza mitzvah vidui. Just one word. If a person confesses in Yom Kippur and says Chatasi, I've sinned, using this term of Chet, so with this he's done his mitzvah of confessing on Yom Kippur. So Tafim Fashtein, based on what we saw before in the Gemara, so the question here is as follows: From Stimas Lashon Hanal is mashma. So from what we see here in this lashon, it seems to be that as the vidui b'lashon Chatasi alein, confessing and using the term just Chatasi, nit sagen de Avisi upashati. Not adding Avisi or Pashati that refers to the Averis done b'mezid, or the Averis done as a merida, rebelling against Hashem, is genug evala Averis. Just the term Chatasi is enough of a confession for all Averis. Afile ois doinis umardim. Even for those Averis that are done b'mezid or as a merida. So the question here is, why would confessing and saying that I've done an Aveda b'shoigeg maspik zayin of maradim v'ozdainis? Why would that be a sufficient confession to also include Avedas that a person has done as a merida, to rebel, or intentionally? That's much larger, much more of an Aveda than just saying chatasi. So how could this be considered to be the main mitzvah vidui that you yaitzu with this? So now the Rebbe brings more here, what we see, what the Rambam says regarding confession. Afalpi as ikra vidui is dazagn chatasi. Although, as the Rambam clearly says, and the Alter Rebbe, that just saying chatasi is the main mitzvah of vidui. When there is yaitzu the mitzvah vidui. But however, it's best though, salib shleimus mitzvah vidui, in order that the mitzvah of confession should be done fully and properly. So one should say, like the Rambam says, Ona Hashem chatasi avisi peshati v'arenichamti u'beishti b'maisai u'lo'ilem enichayzel d'avazeh. So as we quoted the same lashon before, that this is the best to include in the vidui more details in saying that what the person is confessing for. Nachmer, Sefer HaMitzvahs, even more so. So in the Sefer HaMitzvahs, Zok the Rambam adds another detail. As in the vidui is man oich koilul bakashas kapara. That one includes also in the confession asking of Hashem for atonement. V'yevakish kapara. You should ask for Hashem to provide an atonement for him. Kumtais. So here it comes out as follows. As in vidui zenedot tzvei inyanim. So we have in vidui two levels, or two different aspects. Aleph, ikra vidui. There's the primary confession, the main confession, or the mitzvah of vidui, the mitzvah of confession. But if them is genug to sagen stam chatasi. As the Rambam says, and the Alter Rebbe says, for this is just enough one word to say, I have sinned, using this expression of chet. Beis, shleimus of vidui, then there's the ultimate or the complete level of where a person is fully confessing, was is kailol nach kama pratim kana, which includes additional details, as the Rambam says. Similar, we find regarding the mitzvah of Chuva as well, these two aspects. As is the mitzvah of Chuva. There is the mitzvah of Chuva, the main mitzvah of what it consists of, as we'll soon see. On the shleimus of mitzvah Chuva, but then there's the mitzvah of Chuva that includes more details to bring the Chuva to its fullest extent. As will be explained later in Sifei. The Yeshleimah. So now we can say over here that these 2 points are connected. As we baal that inyu from vidui, since when it comes to confessing, is nita zaite gezach and inyan tshuva. Confession is not just a side point regarding the tshuva that a person does. Nor das was die tshuva should believe that gesagt werden in dibur. The concept of confessing is to take that tshuva, which is in the heart, where the person returns and repents and returns to Hashem, and to express it in words. To say that I've sinned and therefore I'm returning, so it's expressing the very tshuva itself. So therefore, just like in tshuva, there are 2 levels, 2 aspects of the tshuva, so too in the confession, there are 2 different aspects. Aleph, that ikra vidui, there's the main confession, was dirikta is that ikra from tshuva, which is to express the main tshuva of the person, and you get a satshuva, the expression that Alter Rebbe says, there's mitzvah satshuva. The mitzvah of Chuva, there's the essence of what the mitzvah itself is. One of them is genug chatasi. To express the essence of the mitzvah, it's enough if one just says that one word chatasi as a confession. And Beis, the shleimus from vidui, then there is the completion or the full vidui, the shleimus from Chuva. That expresses the fuller level of tshuva. One of them is an anoitik the ala pratam alam vidui, and for this is necessary to add the other details that the Rambam mentions regarding the vidui to express fully the tshuva. So verstehen das, so to understand the difference between the essence of the tshuva, the mitzvah of the tshuva that comes out in one word of confession, and the full tshuva that comes out in all the details of the vidui. Darf man früher mevai sein, die plukte von Tanoim wegen Chalukei Kapara. So let's explain the argument that we see in the Gemara amongst Tanoim regarding the various categories of atonement that the Gemara tells us about. Shal Rab Masi ben Charash as Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah bereimi. So Rab Masi ben Charash asked from Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah in the city of Rome. Shamaita arba chaluke kapara shahay Rabbi Shmuel deirish. Have you heard of the 4 different categories of kapara that Rabbi Shmuel expounded upon? Amar, so Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah answers, Shloishehem. Now I say that there's only 3 of them. Utshuva im kol echad ve'echad. And with each one of the levels of atonement, their tshuva comes along with them. And he said what the levels are as follows. Avar al esse, a person did an aveda, transgressed and did not fulfill an asay. Vishav, and he does tshuva. Ein izaz misham at shamaychlon like. He doesn't budge from his place after doing tshuva, and the Eibishter immediately forgives him. Avar al loisese, a person transgressed and did not keep a loisese, what he's supposed to refrain from doing. Va'asa tshuva loy. And he does tshuva, vasa tshuva, that is, he does tshuva, is tshuva toile. The tshuva itself suspends any punishment. But only after Yom Kippur does he have the full atonement. Over al krisis u'mises bezdin, a person is over on an aveda where the punishment is kares or mises bezdin, the death that comes from heaven, or the death that comes here from bezdin. Va'asa tshuva, and for this a person did tshuva. Tshuva v'Yom Kippurim Tailan, so after Tshuva and Yom Kippur, his punishment is suspended. The Yisurin Mimarkin. And only after the Yisurin, additional affliction or suffering, the person will be totally cleansed and totally atoned for. Aval Mishi Yesh Chil Hashem Biyadai, a person that has desecrated Hashem's name, Ein Koyach Loi B'Tshuva Litlois V'Loi B'Yom Kippurim L'Chaper. So Tshuva does not have the power to suspend the punishment, and Yom Kippur will not atone for him, and any suffering will not bring a cleansing to the person. All 3, Shuva, Yom Kippurim, and Yisurim, will only suspend the punishment, but only after he passes away, that will totally cleanse the person from the sins and be totally atoned for. That's what we have here in the Gemara. Seems to be a discussion between Rav Masi bar Charash and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah regarding the levels or the categories of kapara. Rav Masi ben Charash starts off saying that there are 4 categories, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, no, there's only 3. So the Mefarshim ask the obvious question here on this discussion. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that says that there's only 3 is counting here 4. Why does he say that there's only 4, or only 3 that is? He counts it as mitzvah saseh, mitzvah loisese, and then kares and mitzvah bezdin, and then chilul Hashem. Then of them da zwei biyurim. Of them zwei biyurim. There are 2 explanations what exactly Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was saying when he only counted 3 chalukei kapara. Aleph, one explanation is the Piddish from Marsha. The Pshat the Marsha says on Azay Shteit Beferish in Yerushalmi ve'brengt taraf, and it says this clearly in the Yerushalmi to explain the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. As tshuva, when it comes to the level of a person that was just over in a mitzvah saseh, and for him, he just has to do tshuva, vibal zidav zaynim kol echad ve'echad. So since tshuva is what's required in each one of these levels, verzi defar net areingerechen zwischen die chilukim and kapara. So therefore, it's not included here in these categories where we are counting the specific levels that are different one from another. So their tshuva, which is the same by all, are not counted. The chilukei kapara, the various categories, when they're divided into different categories, then employs drai. For that we only have 3, Yom Kippurim, Yisurim, and Misa. Yom Kippurim regarding the loisese, and Yisurim regarding kares and mises bezdin, and Misa regarding chilul Hashem. So those are the 3 that are counted because they are divided in different categories. Then Beis, the Piddish from Akeda. Another pshat here to explain what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was saying, that there's only 3 categories of kapara, is what it says in the Sefer Akeda. As in the chilukei kapara werden gerechnet, that in these categories we're only counting nardi v'sa adam yiskape ben b'chayav, what a person will be atoned for in his lifetime. While eina mesim nichnasim leminyan chilukei kapara, the fact that a person can be atoned for after he passes away, that's not counted over here in these levels of kapara. Ela bali tshuva shem chayim. We're only counting what a bal tshuva could achieve while he's alive. So therefore, chilul Hashem is not included in these categories of kapara. Because for chilul Hashem, a person is not atoned for until after he passes away. So those are the 2 explanations in what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was saying here. Eine von den Schwierigkeiten in Piddish HaMarsha is, one of the questions that there are on the pshat that it says in the Marsha is as follows. Leutzaim Piddish, according to his understanding here in the Gemara, it would come out as follows. As the Shinui und Oiftu from Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is changing. When he's saying different than what Rabbi Masya ben Chodesh said. As Shloisha Hein, that there's only 3 categories. Nid, Arba, Chiluke Kapare, and not 4, is Nid Ken Inyan versus Negei ala Halacha. There's really no point, and there's nothing relevant, practically, or la Halacha, in what he's saying back to Rabbi Masya ben Chodesh, that there's only 3 and not 4. Or Nid Ken Chiddush, and the Minyan HaKapara. And we don't really see any Chiddush in what he's saying regarding the Kapara, the atonement. Why? Both the one that was asking here, Rabbi Masya ben Chodesh, and Side Oyne, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and the one that responded, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Zenim B'Shita Achas. They really hold the same thing. As by Over al Asay, when a person is over on a mitzvah Asay, is Genug Chuva Alein. It's enough Chuva to completely atone for the person. They're unterschied zwischen sie, so the only difference between them is nit mer wie man gets a cheshbon ba'alma. Seems to be just a difference as far as the number of whether it's included in the count or not included in the count. See, eich tshuva is zwischen die chelukei kapara oder nit. Whether tshuva, which is equal for all of them, do we include that in the number as a fourth, or because it's the same by all, so we don't include it in the number. But it's just a technical difference as far as the number, whether we want to include it in a separate category or not. But other than that, there's really no difference here between Rabbi Masya ben Chodesh and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So what's really the point of this discussion between them, whether the number is 3 or 4? According to the Marsha, there's another question here. In was versteht die Svare von der Plukte? What is the explanation of the argument here zwischen Rabbi Masya ben Chodesh und as steht in Tosefta? What's the difference between the opinion of Rabbi Masya ben Chodesh, and it actually says this way in the Tosefta as well, was halt as Arba Chiluke Kapara, that says it is 4 levels of Kapara. Varam Chuva is Bechlala because we do count Chuva. When Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was halt as Shloisha, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah that says that there are only 3 and we don't count Chuva because it's the same by all. What's the explanation of this machlekes? The Rebbe, so in order to explain and answer both of these points here, led it that the Akedah says a different shot. As mit Shloisha Hein, when it says here that there's only 3, is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Shailol Chilul Hashem. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is coming to say that we don't count the last, we don't count Chilul Hashem. What's the mit tutarif? And what he's accomplishing by saying this is, as kapara is mechayim dafka. He wants to come and explain that unlike Rabbi Masya ben Chodesh that said that there are 4, because we include also the kapara that a person comes to even after he passes away, so he's coming and saying, no, kapara is only counted if a person could achieve this when he's alive. After a person passes away, then that level of kapara is not counted here. That's the point here of the Akedah, so we understand what they're arguing about, and we understand why there's a certain chiddush in what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said regarding the kapara. But really the question of here is, even according to the explanation of that Akedah, it still requires an additional explanation here. So even Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah agrees that a person will not be atoned for until he passes away. The says as durch mise is da oich let Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah kapara. Even Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah will agree that there is a kapara for the neshama al kapara. For the neshama, after he passes away, then it will achieve its kapara. And therefore nothing will be mentioned, and he will not be punished, God forbid, in Olam Haba, when he comes in the world to come or in Gan Eden. If so, was is fortin afgemene, oichlif lefi pirish akedah zwischen Rabbi Masya ben Chodesh and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So what really is the difference between Rabbi Masya ben Chodesh and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah when Rabbi Masya ben Chodesh says that we include the level of kapara that a person reaches after he passes away, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says no, we're only including the level of kapara or the kapara that a person reaches when he's alive. What they both agree that they will come to a kapara after he passes away, even for Chilul Hashem. But for some reason, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that kapara is not counted. What's the explanation for this machlekes? So the Rebbe will focus on this last point here to explain, according to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, why kapara is dafke mechayim when a person is alive. What the Rebbe first introduces, what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya when he quotes this brayse here. The Alter Rebbe in One Begeres HaTshuva Zok. When the Alter Rebbe begins in Begeres HaTshuva, the Alter Rebbe quotes the Gemara and says as follows: Tanya b'seif Yuma, we learned in the end of Yuma, Shloisha Chiluke Kapara Heim, the 3 categories of kapara. U'tshuva im kol echad. With each one of them, there's tshuva. Bringt noch die drei Bavas. The Alter Rebbe brings the three different the things that are mentioned there, the three categories: Avar mitzvah saseh, Avar mitzvah loisese, and Avar Christus mitzvah bezdin. And then he concludes in the Zanach Masayim, At kan l'shayna braisa. This is the quote of what it says in the braisa. Bringt bechlal nit arab de bava wegen chilul Hashem. The Alter Rebbe does not bring at all the last category mentioned in the braisa, which is chilul Hashem. Und es ist afila nit merames durch meise sein v'chulu. The Alter Rebbe doesn't even hint to it by adding the word v'chulu. Noch dem bava over Christus and Mrs. Bezdin, after quoting the last over Christus and Mrs. Bezdin. So what do we understand from this? Going back to what we had before, how do we explain Rabbi Elazar ben Azari's opinion that only accounts 3 and not 4 categories here? So the fun is verstandig, the way the Alter Rebbe quotes this Braise, it's understood as the Alter Rebbe lernt, as those was Rabbi Elazar ben Azari sagt, shloisha hein, when he says that there are 3 categories of kapara, nehmt zu shoylu sein, nit overall mitzvah saseh chulu, he's not negating mitzvah saseh where there's only tshuva which is equal for all, kepirish ha-mashal like the Mashal's pshat, nor chilul Hashem, kepirish ha-aked, he's negating chilul Hashem, that this is, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is not counting. As we see, the Alter Rebbe doesn't quote it. So Acharei, now the question over here is, why is it at all relevant here in this section of Tanya, Igeres HaTshuva, where the Alter Rebbe discusses, where the Alter Rebbe is Mevaya, Mitzvah HaTshuva, the Alter Rebbe explains what the Mitzvah of Chuva is, on Avedas HaTshuva, what's included in the whole Aveda of Chuva, Al Derech HaNikleb, Al Derech HaSayid, Chulu, both in the revealed aspect of Teire, and also according to the secrets and the deeper elements of Teire, to Maktim Zayin, to give us this introduction here, as Nar Gimel Chaluke Kaparaheim, that there are 3 categories of Chuva that the Gemara counts in this Braise, und mit der Adgoshe, as Chilul Hashem is nit bechlal. And the Alter Rebbe quotes this Braise, and he says, At kan l'shayna Braise, that it should be clear that it's only these 3, and the 4th, Chilul Hashem, is not included. Why is that relevant for the Alter Rebbe to bring here and to emphasize in the beginning of Igeres HaTshuva, where the Alter Rebbe, it doesn't even get into discussing the concept of kapara as much as the union of Tshuva. That's really what the Alter Rebbe is coming to explain. So we can say from what we understand from this is, as he and his senes, this itself is an important point here. By the Alter Rebbe quoting in the beginning of Igeres HaTshuva, this Braise that talks about these categories of kapara. Is the Alter Rebbe madgish, the Alter Rebbe emphasizes with this, as the shleimus von Tshuva is das was he bringt the kapara. That when it comes to Tshuva, so the atonement that comes as a result of the person doing Tshuva is actually the completion of the Tshuva. It adds more to the Tshuva itself. Was the far berengte in Igeres HaTshuva. This also explains why later in Igeres HaTshuva the Alter Rebbe brings oich wegen die taneisim v'chulu, regarding the different fasts that a person fasts in order was fadrin sich legemar kapara, that are necessary for a person to complete his atonement. Weil das alles geht rein in Tachlis und Shleimus von Tshuva. The atonement, the kapara, is also a purpose and also a shleimus of his tshuva. As will be explained soon in Siv Zayin. So we understand why the Alter Rebbe Bechlal brings this Braise. He opens up with this Braise about kapara, where he's going to be speaking about tshuva. And now also, as we pointed out before, the mitzvah said is madgish, as is in blois dosh, shloisha chiluke kapara, by quoting the Braise and emphasizing that there are only 3 levels of kapara, and Chilul Hashem is nit von zei, and Chilul Hashem is not one of them. Is there masber with this? Alter Rebbe explains to us as the inyan kapara, v'es is a tale from shleimus mitzvah HaTshuva. Looking at kapara, when it comes as a shleimus here to complete the tshuva, und the far darf man es mevar sein in Igeres HaTshuva, and therefore the Alter Rebbe is quoting and explaining this here, this kapara, and the taneisim, even in Igeres HaTshuva, because the kapara is also a shleimus of the tshuva, das heißt, which means, das was kapara is their tachlis von tshuva. The fact that kapara is not just a thing for itself, but kapara is also the purpose of the tshuva, is not ot di kapara was tutzachayf mechayim. This is only that the kapara that a person brings and accomplishes and reaches in his lifetime. Und nit die kapara of Chilul Hashem was kommt la'achar miseh, and not the kapara that a person comes to after he passes away. In other words, as the Rebbe will explain soon, If you want to look at kapara as something for itself, so then the kapara, while a person is alive, or the kapara a person reaches after he passes away, are equally a level or a concept of kapara. But the atonement, the kapara that a person comes to as a completion for his tshuva, that is only the kapara in his lifetime. From the ikrim, from Mitzvah of Chuva, because when it comes to tshuva, one of the main points about tshuva is das was in yana is mechayim dafke, is the fact that a person comes to tshuva in his lifetime. It'll come on sifches, as will be explained later in sifches. The beer b'chol zeh. So to explain all of this, so again, the Rebbe will explain there the opinion of Rabbi ben Azariah that we're not counting chilul Hashem because that's dafke in the lifetime of a person, and to explain tshuva, to explain why kapara is the shleimus of tshuva, and that shleimus is only in the lifetime of a person. Gleich noch im brengen de Breise von Seif Yuma. Right after the Alter Rebbe quotes this Breise, sagt the Alter Rebbe in Nigeres HaTshuva, the Alter Rebbe follows up and says as follows. What is the Mitzvah of Chuva? It's for the person to let go of the sin, and from here going forward, not to sin anymore. To make up in his heart with a full, complete resolution. Not to return to this foolishness, and not to anymore transgress and go against the command of the king. This is the Mitzvah of Chuva. From the Dia Kaloshn, Mitzvah Chuva Menatera, he aziva sachet bulvad. So the Alter Rebbe very clearly says that the Mitzvah of Chuva Menatera is just this alone, bulvad. It's just to let go from the sin from here going forward. Is muvam bepashtos. So it's simply understood as Alter Rebbe is the mitzshelel ala andere inyanim. Oster aziva sachet. Alter Rebbe is negating any other elements of Chuva that may be here, which is oich, charate, vidui, which includes also a person's regrets for what he has done in the past, a feeling of regret and remorse, and the confession also. This Alter Rebbe does not mention as far as what the mitzvah of tshuva itself is. It's just, Bulvad Alter Rebbe says, the mitzvah of tshuva menatayr is just to leave, go from the sin from here going forward. Forget about the past, that's not part of the essence of tshuva itself. Now what's the chiddush here? In Chayvus Alvavish state, it says in the Sefer Chayvus Alvavish, as oich charata vidui, also a person regretting and crying over the past, vidui, and confessing about the past. Along with now, from here going forward, to leave go from the sin, the Kabbalah alaba, and accepting for the future, not to sin again. Zenen from the Gidrei Tshuva, that they are also part of the different aspects of what defines Tshuva. So charata and vidui are relevant to the Mitzvah of Chuva. On als tnoi gidrei tshuva, different aspects of what is included in what defines Chuva. Rechnet dort is 20 kinyan. In Chayvus Alvavis, he counts 20 different aspects to Chuva. So he seems to include much more in the Mitzvah of Chuva. Oich, Rabbeinu Yoinen sharet Chuva. Rabbeinu Yoinen in his Sefer sharet Chuva. Rechnet is die drei Sachen als Yisaides HaTshuva. These 3 points mentioned here, the Charate, the Vidui, and the Kabbalah for the future. He includes them in the foundations of Chuva. Und 20 Kinyanim als Ikri Tshuva, and then also counts 20 different aspects in the fundamentals or the main points of what Tshuva consists of. Aber, however, from them was the Alter Rebbe sagt, from this that the Alter Rebbe says, as Mitzvah Tshuva is aziva sachet bulvad. It's just about letting go from the sin from here going forward. Is mochach, it's clear, as the Alter Rebbe nemt on, that the Alter Rebbe is saying here, Hagam, charate, vidui, zenen fun gidrei tshuva. Even if you'll say that charate, vidui, the regrets and the confession on the past are different aspects of tshuva. When you say this at tshuva, there are foundations, fundamental points of tshuva. However, it's not the essence of the mitzvah of tshuva. Even if it's true that they are necessary components of tshuva, but it's not what defines the very essence of the mitzvah of tshuva. Etzamat tshuva, what is the essence of tshuva? Is aziv sachet bulvad. Is this alone that a person from here going forward changes his behavior and is making a resolution to let go from the aveda? Und the riber is mit aziv sachet alein yoytze mitzvah tshuva. And therefore, if a person just has this, that he's doing tshuva by letting go from the sin from here going forward, that alone is the essence of the mitzvah of tshuva. So although there are other components and aspects to tshuva, but nevertheless, the essence of tshuva is just this, that the person lets go from the sin. What's the reason for this? The time for was mitzvah tshuva is be'ikir niti charata la'avachol. Why is it that the Mitzvah of Chuva is not primarily a person focusing on the past and crying about the past and regretting what he has done and so on, which according to others, we may think that might be the main focus of Chuva. The fact that a person is making that resolution going forward to do mitzvahs and not to do any averis, so that's already after the person has completed his Chuva and is sort of moving on. But you might think that the essence of Chuva is looking back into the past and crying about the past. But here the Alter Rebbe tells us no. The Chuva is not about focusing on the past. The Chuva is just about moving forward with a resolution that he will not do any Aveda anymore. So why is that the essence of Chuva? No, the full resolution for the future. Nitzu bageimer kinzin, not to do any Aveda anymore. Is weil, so the reason is, Mitzvah Chuva besteht dem, was sie darf öfton in Menschen mikano lahaba. Because this is what the Chuva is about. Chuva is about what it accomplishes, what it does in the person from here going forward. As werden eis Rasha und werden a tzaddik gomer. The essence of Chuva is simply this point, that the person is changing from being a Rasha, person that does Avedis, to a person that is a tzaddik gomer that does not do Avedis anymore. So to make that switch from a Rasha to a tzaddik, it's just this resolution that going forward he's not anymore behaving like a Rasha, and he's just going to do mitzvahs like a tzaddik. Focusing on the past and the remorse and the regret regarding the past. So now focusing on the past and crying about that and really regretting about what he did in the past would be necessary to bring the Eibusher should forgive him and atone for him. In the skape werden the chet was getan frier, that what he has done before, so the actions that the person did before, it could have been a direct rebellion against Hashem, or things that he's done b'mezid, or even things that have done b'shegig, and it leaves a certain effect upon the person. And for that, to do tshuva and to cleanse yourself and to bring a full atonement, that is a separate point. That's the point of the kapara regarding the problems and the blemishes and the condition that the person is in, who he was in the past. That's a separate point. But the essence of tshuva, though, is the behavior in the future, the fact that from this point forward, the person is a tzaddik, just by the resolution itself that he's not going to do any avedis anymore. So now, from this moment forward, he becomes a tzaddik. Whatever else he has to deal with from the past.
Das heißt, now what this means is as follows. Bepayol kommt durch tshuva euch die Kapara von Ovar. The reality is that when a person does tshuva, it does bring an atonement also for everything he's done in the past. Aber es ist nicht kein Chelek von etzem tshuva. However, this is not part of the essence of tshuva. Tshuva is about the person being changed from here going forward. What tshuva accomplishes, the atonement for the past, that's not the essence of tshuva. We could even define this a step further and say, as es is nor was rotza kadosh baruch hu. This was the will of Hashem. As b'shas the mensch that tan tshuva veter im machape sein. Then the Eibusher will bring upon him a kapara. In other words, the mitzad the person, as far as what the person is doing, his avodah of tshuva is just from here now going forward to do tshuva. That's it. No focus at all on the past. The fact that when a person does tshuva, this also changes his past, that Hashem forgives him, that's Hashem's desire. Hashem desired and said that when a person does what he has to from here going forward, then Hashem will come and atone for his past as well. On the Rebbe, and therefore we see a filler Rabbeinu Yaina. Even Rabbeinu Yaina was lafishi tasai is charata la'avar vidui fun yisaydis tshuva. So he says that charata, the regret for the past, and the confession are from the fundamentals of tshuva. Kanal sifei, as mentioned before. Rechente Rabbe nit in them the bakashas kapara. He, however, does not count and include begging for the atonement. Bakashas kapara is an inyan from tefillah. When a person asks to Hashem that he should atone him, this is a person davening. It's not part of the tshuva at all. You're davening and asking Hashem for this atonement. Beim tshuvaton betman oich beim oibishten as al mechape sein de chatoim. When you do tshuva, you're davening to Hashem and asking for the atonement as well. This is aber nit migidri tshuva. Even according to Rabbeinu Yaina, it's not part of what defines or any of the aspects of the mitzvah of tshuva. Nachmer, even furthermore, we can say, the kapara, the fact that a person will be atoned for what he's done in the past, is not even a necessary result of the tshuva of the person. And most definitely, it does not prevent the person of doing tshuva from here going forward. This is muchach from them, as it's understood and it's clear from this. As an doa zayna avedis, says there are such avedis. Biz v'bal erve v'hailud mimena mamzer. When a person has a forbidden relationship and the child that's born is a mamzer, was veren nit niskaper afil durch yom kippurim on yisurim chulu. And the Gemara says that a person will not be atoned for even after Yom Kippur passes and after Yisurim as well, because there's a child, there a mamzer that's in the world. Unafal pikein, but yet gleich vir to tshuva ver tereis rasha. But for the person himself, though, the Gemara says that after he does tshuva, so he's not a rasha anymore. And as Isa Maisa Amcha, he's considered to be an individual that's acting like the people in Klal Yisrael, like the rest of the nation, and he's a Bal Tshuva. He's a tzaddik from this point forward. Even though the atonement on the past cannot be achieved because there's a mamzer here in the world. So we clearly see that the kapara, which is focused on the past to cleanse the person, and the tshuva, which is focused on the future, that he is now a tzaddik, are not necessarily dependent one another. But yet at the same time, brengt the Alter Rebbe Nigeres HaTshuva euch in yonim wegen kapare kanal sif dalet. So the Alter Rebbe Nigeres HaTshuva does bring different aspects regarding kapare. As quoted before, the Alter Rebbe begins with this braisa about the chiluke kapare. Was von dem ist verstandig, so we do understand from this as euch kapare is negeya in Mitzvah Chuva. That the kapara, the fact that a person is being atoned for, and this is focusing also on the past to cleanse the person, is relevant to the mitzvah of tshuva. Is there inyan in them? So the point here is, in tshuva zenafaran tzvei inyanim. Because when it comes to tshuva, there are two different aspects in the tshuva. Aleph, the tshuva atzma. The tshuva itself was the mensch tut, this that a person does tshuva, that's the mitzvah of tshuva the person does. Und inyane is mikano lahaba kanal. As far as that is concerned, the tshuva is just this itself, that the person changes his behavior from here going forward, and that's it. There's nothing else that's part of the essence of tshuva. But then there tachlis un mevukish un mesuve von tshuva. But then you have the purpose or the objective, the outcome of the tshuva. As the Eibishter soll mechaper sein auf seine averis. That Hashem should atone for the averis that a person has done. Biz as alverin, and to the point that the person accomplishes that he becomes merutze v'chavev l'fanav yisbarach k'kaydem achet, that he should become totally accepted and beloved by Hashem like before he did the avera. That's the objective of tshuva. Mitzadem darf sein zusammen mit azivis achet, and therefore along with this that a person does tshuva and he lets go from the avera from here going forward. Oich the andere gidrei tshuva, there are other aspects to tshuva, charot ala ovar, vidu v'chulu, fact that a person regrets the past and he confesses, those aspects of tshuva which come and bring about the atonement for the person for the past. But this is not the essence of the tshuva itself that the person is doing. What the person has to do is the tshuva going forward. The result of the tshuva, what the tshuva accomplishes, which is the eibishter, atoning for the person, that also is focusing on cleansing the person of the past, that he should be totally accepted by Hashem like before. That's the second aspect of tshuva. Aber afalpi as der mevukish von tshuva is kapara la'avar. But even though the point of the tshuva is that it brings about a kapara also for the past, von deswegen ka'omer le'el, but nevertheless, as said before, euch von die tshuva bringt nicht die kapara, even if the tshuva will not result in a kapara, is this nit ma'akiv the mitzvah tshuva. It will not prevent the tshuva itself. And also not the main effect of the tshuva, which is from here going forward. The fact that from here going forward the person is a tzaddik and not a rasha. And the Rebbe brings an example for this, like you have regarding davening. That a person davens. The point of davening is what? That a person should have Hashem answer his prayers. But what happens if Hashem does not answer? Did the person do his mitzvah of davening? Yes. The mitzvah of davening is that a person should daven to Hashem, turn to Hashem when he's in a time of need. The result that Hashem listens to you, of course that's the objective of the davening. But at the same time though, even if the result does not come to be, it doesn't take away from the mitzvah that he has done, that he's davening to Hashem. That's a good example to understand what the Rebbe is saying here regarding the two aspects of tshuva. Ki yedua, the Rebbe continues, so now it's known. As kiyam ha-mitzvah is dafke b'olam hazeh neshamas begufim. When it comes to fulfilling mitzvahs, the main place where mitzvahs are done, or really the only place where mitzvahs are done, is here in this world. When a person is in a soul and a body. Not in Gan Eden after the person departs from the body. At that point, when a person passes away, he's free from his obligation of fulfilling mitzvahs. Just like we understand that the fulfillment of mitzvahs is only a soul in a body, so the main accomplishment of a person fulfilling mitzvahs is not the reward that he reaches to after he passes away, for the neshama in Gan Eden. Not as it is mekayim tachlis b'riyasai, but rather the fact that he fulfills the purpose of his creation. A Yid is created to serve his master, and v'atam tiyuli mamlechas kainim v'goy kodesh, and to be part of the Yiddish nation, to be a nation of kings or kayanim, goy kodesh, a holy nation. B'lashna chasidis veren betzafse mitzvah lashon tzafse. To use the expression that Chassidus says, that a person does a mitzvah to become connected, v'chibur mit Hashem mitzvah mitzvahs, to become one with Hashem that commands the mitzvahs. Which means, mamshech zayin, to draw down the revelation, the connection to Hashem in the neshama v'zis ungetan in guf. The neshama as it is in a body. Bis zum mezachech zayin dem guf allein. To refine and elevate the body itself. That is the focus of the mitzvahs. So it's not only while a person is here in the guf that you could fulfill a mitzvah, but that's actually the main focus, to bring that connection of the mitzvah into the body. As Erzol Veren, Akeli Lelakos, that the guf itself should also become a vessel for godliness. So now, applying this back to the essence and to what the Mitzvah of Chuva is. From them is move on. So from this we understand Benegayat some Mitzvah of Chuva regarding the Mitzvah of Chuva, as das was ir mevukish und tachlis is kapara. The fact that also the objective of Chuva is to come to kapara, to be atoned for the averis that you've done in the past. Is ikra di kapara was tutzachaif in the neshama v'zis angetan in guf and in dem guf allein. Primarily, this is regarding the kapara that a person brings to not only the neshama, but the neshama as it is in a body and for the body itself. That's the main objective of the kapara that's brought through tshuva, because we're talking about the mitzvah of tshuva that a person does, like all mitzvahs, which is primarily focused on the result that it brings for the body in this world. Which is not included in the kapara that a person can come to after he passes away. As the Salzain de Kapara de Mise Tutzachayev Durich Tshuva, even if also this level of Kapara is accomplished ultimately also through the Tshuva, but because a person doesn't come to this in his lifetime, so this is not a shleimus of Kapara that you could say that it's a shleimus in the Tshuva, because Tshuva is like every mitzvah only regarding in a person's lifetime in his neshama beguf, in the body. Das is der Chiddush von Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So this is the point that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was saying here. V'zagt shloisha hein. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that there's only three categories of kapara. Rabbi Masya ben Chorash read wegen inyane kapara als kapara. Rabbi Masya ben Chorash was speaking about categories of kapara, the different times or levels that a person could come to an atonement. Ubemele. So therefore he says that there are four different categories for kapara. Chil Hashem, which includes also Chil Hashem, where a person has the kapara after he passes away. Even in such a case, a person can reach a kapara for his soul. After he leaves this world. So that's if you're talking about kapara itself. Not as a shleimus for the tshuva, not as a result of the tshuva. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah read wegen dem minyan kapara b'shayches zum mitzvahs tshuva. He speaks about the kapara in relation to tshuva. What happens as a result of the tshuva, as the objective of the tshuva. Or you say to mizu, or to say even more than this. Read wegen dem minyan von tshuva. He speaks about tshuva wie durch tshuva vert der venake. The fact that tshuva brings a cleansing to the person, menakehu l'shavin, the fact that tshuva, as the Lashon the Gemara says, that it cleanses a person. So as far as that aspect is concerned, the tshuva as a cleansing to the person, which aspect of the person are we speaking about? We're talking about the cleansing to the neshama and to the guf in this world. Rechenter der ribbe blois gimel chaluke kapara. So therefore, he counts three different categories of kapara, but not the one that comes after he passes away. Adi v'zer kapara is mechayim, only what a person reaches when he's alive. Weil in dem besteht der oivtoe ikri von alle mitzvahs Kailul mitzvahs tshuva kanal. Because this is the main point of all mitzvahs, including the mitzvah of Chuva, which is in a person's lifetime to affect and elevate and refine also the body together with the neshama. And therefore, in this, kapara mechayim is included, but the kapara that's not in a person's lifetime is not included. Und der Rebbe is in Igeres HaTshuva, so therefore the Alter Rebbe in Igeres HaTshuva, wo der Alter Rebbe read, wegen in Yonah Kapare mitzad Yeshayches to Tshuva, where the Alter Rebbe brings up the concept of Kapare in its relation to Tshuva, brengt shloisha chaluke Kapare. Therefore the Alter Rebbe is very precise in saying that there are only 3 categories for Kapare, und Chilul Hashem geht nit da rein in them. And that Chilul Hashem is not one of them, because Chilul Hashem is only kapara that does not relate to the body. And since we're discussing the mitzvah of tshuva, so the shleimus of the tshuva, which is the kapara, is only that kapara which can affect not only the soul, but also the body. That's the hezber for Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So sort of the Rebbe is saying that Rabbi Masi ben Chadash and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah are not really arguing, but they're focusing on different aspects of kapara. Rabbi Masi ben Chadash speaks about the kapara alone, which could be seen as a separate thing, unrelated to the tshuva of the person. It's the ratzon of Hashem to bring an atonement upon the person when he does the tshuva, as the Rebbe said before. But then there's another aspect of the kapara, the fact that the kapara comes as a result of his tshuva, and that in this, that it's a shleimus to the tshuva, here that's only in a person's lifetime. There's a lot more, by the way, here in the Ha'aris, so much depth here in the Ha'aris, which if you have time, it definitely pays to take a look and learn the Ha'aris over here. It will give you much better, deeper understanding of what's going on here. Let's continue. Kishem vi in tshuva zene farandi tzvei inyanim. So just like in tshuva, we have these 2 aspects. Aleph, tshuva atzma, vas ikra is mikana laba. The main thing is the tshuva itself, which is from here going forward, that the person changes his behavior. On beis shleimus tshuva. The fullness of the tshuva was brengt the tikkun v'kapara from ova, which rectifies things and also brings an atonement for whatever he's done wrong in the past. Azay is benigeya the mitzvah from vidui. So we could see this reflected in the mitzvah of vidui, confession, was das is v'di tshuva shebelev kumt up in dibur kanal sif beis. As mentioned before, vidui is not just the side aspect of tshuva, but this is the expression of the tshuva itself. Azay chanir and faran di tzvei inyanim. So in the vidui as well, you have these 2 aspects. What are the 2 aspects of the vidui? Aleph, der Ikir, mitzvahs vidui. What is the primary mitzvah of vidui? Dem zagen chatasi. Just this itself, that a person could say one word, I have sinned. And that's just chatasi, which could even mean b'shoigeg. Weil das direkt ist the mitzvah tshuva. Just the confession of chatasi, this is the expression of the mitzvah of tshuva. Kabbalah ala haba, that the person is ready to accept for the future. Which means, hayos anerkennt, as das was hat getan is achet, that he understands and recognizes what he's done as an aveire. Meint es b'meile as beschließt nicht zu tun das noch einmal. So just by saying chatasi, that is the resolution not to sin again. Hat sich aber nicht in dem die richtige charata ala ova. But in this one word, you don't have the real full regret for what he has done in the past. Warum mit dem Sagen chatasi, when a person just says this one word chatasi? Was beikir meint es shoigeg, primarily the word chatasi is regarding the averes that are done b'shoigeg. And kennt it as hat over averi gewen beratzen b'yidiyah. He's not including in this, he's not recognizing that he's done averes also willingly and knowingly, as that is be'emes schuldig in them, that it's fully his responsibility. Manit was durch im, but rather what he's just saying is aber b'li di yasai, that it's through him and with not even necessarily with his awareness, is given atakola baila. There was a problem that was brought about through his behavior in the world. Aveira v'havara of mitzvahs hamelech malka shalaylam, transgressing and moving away from the command of the king of the world. And possibly he has different excuses in his mind why this has happened. So if a person does not fully really take responsibility, he doesn't feel at fault for this, so this doesn't bring the proper regret for what he has done. So the chatasi, if you want to focus on the awareness and the recognition that I have sinned and moving forward, I dropped this and I will change, so chatasi is enough. But if you want to focus on the chatasi as a confession, to have the full remorse for the past, That one word chatasi is not enough. It's not shleimus, shleimus from mitzvahs vidui, to come to the full concept of the confession, as a direct eisen dibur, zayin shleimus hatshuva charata la'ava, that when he's confessing. So this comes to the completion of tshuva, which is also the regret on the past. Biz ladas kama to bet mechila al zeh by meibshin, which according to some also includes to beg for forgiveness by Hashem for what he has done in the past when he has transgressed or even rebelled against Hashem. So for that, you have to have much more. Und damit is move on, was mit den Sagen chatasi. So now we can understand why when a person just says this one word alone, chatasi, is men yaitze mitzvahs vidui, so a person is yaitze the mitzvah of vidui, even for those avedas that he's done b'mezer as well. Weil damit direkt is the mitzvah Chuva min Acharei shehi azivas achet polvad. Because just by saying chatasi, this is enough if you're focusing on the future, which is what the essence of the mitzvah of Chuva is, that a person is ready to change his behavior. Just like by saying chatasi, he's admitting and confessing that he's done avedas and is ready to move forward and to change. He hasn't said specifically which type of avedas and to take full responsibility of the level of the rebellion and so on. That's not necessary for the essence of tshuva. The shleimus of tshuva includes more, and therefore the shleimus of the vidui also includes lechatchila to say the other details to bring the full regret for the past. So this explains the Rabbi began with in the Sicha the two levels of vidui that there are corresponding to the two concepts that there is in the tshuva that's expressed in the vidui. Alle inyanim von nigle de Teire, gufe Teire, all matters that we find in the revealed aspect of Teire, it's the body of Teire, zene verbunden mit nishmasa da'iraisa, is connected to the soul of Teire, which is the innermost part of Teire. Und noch mehr, even more so, ze werden nistalshul von inyanam bepnimiyis benishmas ha-Teire. What we find in the revealed aspect of Teire evolves and comes from the source, which is the inner part, the soul of the Teire. Is the fun move on. So from this we understand that the zwei shittis in Braise, the two opinions in how to explain the Braise quoted before. Gimel und Dalit chiluke kapara, whether there are 3 or 4 levels or aspects in the atonement. Is dugmasam bepnimiyas ha-Teire. We find this also to be explained in the inner part of Teire, api Kabbalah v'chsidis, according to the way it's explained in Kabbalah and Chsidis. Okay, so over here get ready for the Rebbe to explain this inyan in the language of Kabbalah, pretty concisely, using different terminologies here to explain what's the significance of dividing it into 3 categories or 4 categories. Wegen die zwei Misparen. So regarding these 2 numbers, Gimel und Dalet, whether 3 or 4. Sagt the Tzemach Tzedek says, what's the significance of Gimel and Dalet? As in Kalim, Zenefaran, Gimel B'chinis. And the level of Kalim, they're divided into 3 levels. And in Eiris, when it comes to the revelations, to the lights, Dalet B'chinis. It's divided in 4. So when the Rebbe speaks about Eiris and Kalim here, this is a common terminology used in Chassidus and Kabbalah. As we'll see soon, the Rebbe gives the example for this. The Neshama and the Guf is the Eir, the Neshama is the life force in the person, and the body is the Keli, is the vessel that contains the Guf, the Neshama that is in it. That's a simple example for Eiris and Kalim, but the same is also true in all of the levels and all of the spiritual worlds, that it's comprised of Eiris and Kalim. So Eiris are 4 and Kalim are 3. And the Rebbe here explains shortly why that is. Drei B'chinis Eiris, there are 3 levels of revelation, that relate and enter into the Kalim to be received and enclosed in the Kalim. On the vierte Darge, then there's a 4th level of light, Eiris, was then an Hecher von the Slapshus Bekalim. That's above the Kalim, it does not get enclosed and involved in the Kalim. Therefore, wern Eilim is geteilt. The farther is, and therefore the Eilim is, the worlds also are divided in these levels. B'chlalos and drei darges. So we know that in the spiritual worlds, that's divided generally into 3 levels. Bria, Yetzirah, Va'asiyah. The 3 worlds of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. While Eilim is in Yanam Kalim. The concept of every world is defined and contains a certain level of what exists in that reality in that world. So every world is another Keli, represents another level. On Atzilus, the world of Atzilus, which is higher and above these 3 worlds, was Acharei is Eiris. That's a world which is primarily revelations. geht nicht rein in dem Minyan. Does not enter into this count of the Kalim. Because over there it's primarily Iris, so only when you speak about Iris do you include the fourth world, which is therefore the Iris are hinted in the number Dalet. Verstandig, die zwei Shittis from Rabbi ben Chorash and Rabbi ben Azariah. With this we understand the two opinions regarding how we count the Chelukei Kapara. Rabbi ben Chorash counts it as 4, and Rabbi ben Azariah counts it as 3. Steht in Kabbalah, so in Kabbalah it says, as the Dalit Chelukei Kapara, that the 4 different categories of Kapara counted there, then in Keneged, the Dalit Dailim Misabiyah, correspond to these 4 worlds of Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, and Asiyah. Mitzvah Sasei is in the world of Asiyah, Mitzvah Loisase in Yitzira, Kristus and Mrs. Bezdin is in Bria, and Chilul Hashem is in Atzilus. So the atonement for each one of these corresponds to another world, to a higher world, depending on the level of atonement that you have to achieve and reach, so you go a world higher and higher. So now, Rab Masya ben Chorash read wegen was in dem seine voran the Dalet Prinnes. Rab Masya ben Chorash is speaking about the levels of revelation that you have to reach to achieve this atonement, and therefore he divides it into the 4 levels. The Rebbe rechenter Dalet Chelukei Kapara. That's why he says it are 4 categories of Kapara. And Rabbi ben Azariah read wegen Kalim. Rabbi ben Azariah, on the other hand, is speaking about the way the Kapara is divided according to the level of Kalim, in those levels where it's contained. The light is contained in these Kalim that you have to reach. The Rebbe rechenter nor Gimel Chelukei Kapara. So therefore he only counts 3 categories for the Kapara. Und rechnet nicht Chilul Hashem, was is Keneged Atzilus. And he does not count Chilul Hashem, where in order to reach an atonement for Chilul Hashem, you have to reach all the way up to the world of Atzilus, which is where primarily is just light and revelation without being defined and contained as it is in the other 3 worlds. Und das ist Masim mit den Eiden gesagten Hezber in Nigle in das Rabbi ben Azariah. The explanation here, and the difference between Rabbi Masya ben Chorash and Rabbi ben Azariah, how we count the Chelukei Kapara, it fits with what we said before in Nigle to explain the opinion of Rabbi ben Azariah. So what did we say before? As Erechenit Chilul Hashem, so the reason he doesn't count Chilul Hashem, weil sein Miruk is Durich Misa. Because the cleansing and the atonement for Chilul Hashem is only after the person passes away. So how is this connected to what we're saying here, that the atonement of Chilul Hashem is connected to the world of Atzilus, which is primarily a revelation without a Keli? Varom, Neshama and Guf, the 2 parts of a person's being, his soul and his body, werden nimshach, ozenen in der Dugme, von Iris and Kalim. They come from and they are similar to the 2 levels that all the worlds comprise of, which is Iris and Kalim. Neshama is Iris, the soul of a person is the revelation. Guf, the body, Kalim. That's the body, that the physical that contains the revelation of the Neshama in it. So therefore we understand. Das was rechenit Chilul Hashem, so the fact that he does not count amongst the Chelukei Kapara, Chilul Hashem, tzliv dem, was ein Miruk, is durich Misa, Yitzias HaNeshama Ma'aguf, because this is an atonement that you reach only when you pass away, when the Neshama departs from the body, is behesem mitten hezber shapi Kabbalah. That fits perfectly with the explanation according to Kabbalah that says, as Chilul Hashem is Keneged Atzilus, that to reach the atonement for Chilul Hashem, you have to reach up to the world of Atzilus. Was is Bechinas Oyer, Shalamaylam Eslapshus Bekelim, which is a place, which is a world that is primarily a revelation above being enclosed in a Keli, which reflects itself in the life of a person where after his neshama departs from the body. So this is all the explanation of the machlokes of Rabbi Masya ben Chorash and Rabbi ben Azariah according to one opinion, that they're arguing regarding Chilul Hashem, whether you include Chilul Hashem in the Dalit Chelukei Kapara or not. Now the Rebbe will explain the other opinion. So it's geret frier, so we spoke before, as in Yerushalmi, und leiten Marsha is as the Pshat in Bavli, that it says clearly in the Yerushalmi, and the Marsha says that in the Bavli this is also the Pshat. As Rabbi ben Azar is Rabbi ben Azar Yemeine Yom Kippurim Yisurim und Mise und Nit Tshuva. What he counts is the 3 things that bring about atonement: Yom Kippur, Yisurim, and Misa, which are unique in their own way. But he doesn't count Tshuva because Tshuva is something that's equal by all. So now to explain, according to this pshat in the language of Kabbalah, in Oisiyis HaKabbalah Hanal. So to explain it in the words of Kabbalah. So that means that Rabbi ben Azariah is only counting the levels of kapara that are related to the 3 worlds of Atzilus, Bria, and Yitzireh, unit Asiyah. He does not count the level of Asiyah, was Mitzvah Sasei, Chuva is Kenegda, where Mitzvah Sasei is corresponding to the world of Asiyah, where a person just does Chuva and that reaches the atonement, that he does not count. So how do we explain this according to Kabbalah? Is the beard in them? So the explanation here is as follows. The Misparim Gimel and Dalet, so now to explain the difference between these two numbers, 3 and 4, or Gimel and Dalet, is Meramalech Mevayer. So sometimes there's an explanation given, the Loik, the Le'el Sif different than what we explained before in Sif Yud, what these numbers are, as the Chum Gimel Vaistav Iris, that it's actually in the reverse. The number 3 refers to the revelation, to the lights, on Dalid of Kalim. And the number 4, Dalid, that refers to the Kalim. Why is it in the opposite? So the Rebbe explains, Ki Yedua teilen sich die Esses Spheres in Daled Beginnes. So it's known that the 10 spheres can be divided into the following 4 categories. There's Chochmeh, Bina. Chochmeh is the breakthrough, the opening, the first level of revelation. Then Bina, when it's defined, then it's comprehended and it's brought down into details. That's all still within Meichin. And then Zah, which is the Midas of Hashem, on Malchus. And then finally the level of Malchus, the lowest level that receives all and brings out the Hashpah to the next world. Those are the 4 levels that the 10 spheres can be divided into. So now, the erste 3 Beginnes zijn Beginnes Mashpia. The first 3 levels here, Chachme, Bina, and Zah, are a Mashpia. It's a level that contains a revelation of its own, and it gives its own aspect of revelation. On Malchus is Bechinas Makabel. Regarding Malchus, it says in many places, Malchus has nothing of its own. Malchus is just there to receive from the Hashpah, from the higher levels of the Spheres, and it gives it over to the lower world. Mustafar is Ikra Kalim in Malchus. Primarily the concept of Kalim, even if you do have it to some extent in the previous levels, but primarily a Kali, which is just the idea of a Kali, to receive, is in Malchus. So now, so it comes out, Lefize, Weisen die Gimel erste Beginnes, Chochme, Bine, Zah, auf Eiris, Mashpia. So looking at the 10 spheres, the 3 first aspects of the 10 spheres, Chochme, Bine, and Zah, which are Mashpia, which provide a certain light of its own, that is lights, that's the first 3 levels. On the Beginne, Haravias, and then including the 4th level, Daled, Malchus, if Kalim, Makabel. So the 4th level of Malchus, that's the level where it receives. That's the Kali. So therefore the number Daled refers to the Kalim. This also is reflected in the worlds that there are, we mentioned before, Atzilis, Bri, Yitzir, and Asiyah. Was the Daled Beginnes Hanal, the 4 different aspects that there are in the spheres also correspond to the 4 Eilemis. The Mispar Gimel weist of Atzilis, Bri, Yitzir. The number 3 refers to the 3 worlds of Atzilus, Bria, and Yitzire. Atzilus corresponds to Chochmeh, Bria corresponds to Bina, and Yitzire has Zot, the Midas in it. The Mispar Dalet, the number 4, if alle 4 Elemis, includes all 4 Oich Asiyah. Also the lowest world, the world of Asiyah as well, which is corresponding to Malchus. So this is a different explanation in how we understand the difference between the number Gimel and Dalet. Gimel is the Eiris, and Dalet is the Kalim. So now according to this it would come out as Oich the Mispar from Gimel Chiluke Kaparisha B'Yerushalmi, the 3 that the way Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is dividing it in Yerushalmi, Vu Mitzvah Sasei Keneged Asiyah Veret Nit Gerechend. So the lowest level, the Mitzvah Sasei, corresponding to the world of Asiyah, is not counted, is Masam al Pi Kabbalah. So this also fits according to what it says in Kabbalah. Val di Gimel Beginnes Weisen Lepirish Zeh, the 3 levels, according to this interpretation, what do they show on? If Atzilus, Bri, Yitzire. That refers to the 3 worlds of Atzilus, Bri, and Yitzire. Was Kenegdom Zenin, Chilul Hashem, Krisis Umisis Bezin, Umitzis Leisasa. As we said before, Chilul Hashem, to achieve atonement for this, you have to reach to the world of Atzilus, for Krisis Umisis Bezin, to the world of Bria, and for Mitzis Leisasa, to the world of Yitzire. But Asiyah here is not counted because Asiyah is the lowest. It refers to the Mitzvah Sasei, which is the Makabel, the Kali, and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was only talking about the Eiris, not about the Kalim. That's the Hezber according to what it says in the Yerushalmi. So basically it comes out according to the first Hezber, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was focusing on the levels of the Kapare, the way it relates to the Kalim, and therefore he counts Bri, Yitzire, and Asiyah. According to this Hesber in Yerushalmi, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is focusing on the levels of the kapara that you have to reach in the Oiris, and therefore he's only counting Atzilus, Bria, and Yitzire, and he skips Asiya, which is the lowest. And over there, that's just a makabel, primarily, not an Inyan of Oiris. So those are the two interpretations here. Now, alle Pirushim von Teire, velachazenen be'inyan echad, zenen shayach zelazeh. All different interpretations in Teire that relate to one concept are connected to one another. A point that the Rebbe says many, many times is al pizeh di tzvei pirushim anal. So therefore, over here, regarding these two interpretations, tzi mitten shloisha hein. When Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says that there's only 3 levels of kapara, is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah shailul chilul Hashem atzilus? Is he negating, is he not counting the level of kapara of chilul Hashem, which is in the world of atzilus? Or the mitzvah saseh asiya, or he's not counting the level of kapara, seemingly the lowest level of kapara, which is the world of asiya. So, in other words, in this simply, it seems like these two pshatim are really complete opposites. Which one is he skipping? Is he skipping the highest level of kapara relating to the world of atzilus, or is he skipping the lowest level of kapara relating to the world of asiya? They seem to be contradicting interpretations, very different. They are really related to one another. Whether it's the one of Atzilus, the highest level of kapara, or the lowest level of kapara of Asiya that he's not counting, these two levels of kapara that he decides not to count are related to one another. Where do we see this? The pasuk which is the source for these ilamis, that for my honor, there's the world of Bria, and then there's the world of Yitzire, and then there's the world of Asiya. But it says there also the word Af, adding another world here that besides these 3 of Bria, Yitzire, and Asiya, there's one more. Steht in Lukutei Teire, so the Alter Rebbe explains in Lukutei Teire, as mit dem Wort Af, Loshen Riboy, it adds one more, is the pasuk Marbe, noch an Inyan, was is Hecher from Barasev Geimer. The pasuk here is adding another world that's higher than the world of Bria, Pchinas Atzilus. And that's the source for the world of Atzilus. On the Riboy von Af steht bei Asisiv Dafke. And here there's another diuk. Where does the pasuk add a hint for the world of Atzilus? It writes it Af Asisiv, together with the world of Asiya. So the Alter Rebbe says, "Weil der Gilui von Atzilus kommt durch Avede in Asiya Dafke." When a Yid serves Hashem here in this lowest world, it's this Avede specifically that reaches not to the highest spiritual worlds of Yitzire or Bria, but to Atzilus, to the highest place. Dafka, the value of the Aveda here in the lowest world, can surpass the other spiritual worlds and reaches directly to Atzilus, and therefore Af, which hints to Atzilus, is right near Asiya. So this is the connection of both of these interpretations. Which one of the 2 kaparas is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah leaving out? The kapara of Atzilus or the kapara of Asiya? Weil Dafka Asiya is verbunden mit Atzilus, because here this hints to us, we can see that the lowest level of kapara of Asiya is connected to the kapara of the world of Atzilus. Just like we see the Alter Rebbe says, B'chlal, that a Yid's Aveda and Asiya reaches all the way to Atzilus, it's the same over here regarding kapara. The kapara of Asiya is related to the kapara of Atzilus, and therefore the 2 interpretations, which one he leaves out, are both connected to one another. So that's the connection regarding what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah leaves out. Now we can say the connection between these 2 pirushim goes even further. We can say even more. The shaykhis from the beide pirushim, the connection of these 2 interpretations here in what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's opinion is nit nor in dem ferten sug. It's not only regarding the 4th category of kapara. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is shailul, the one that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah leaves out, Atzilus or the Asiya, whether the kapara of the world of Atzilus or the kapara of the world of Asiya, nor oich in the gimel sugim was harechent yah. But the connection is also regarding the 3 categories of kapara that he does count, and over here we had the 2 opposite interpretations. Das heißt, so again what we said before, the gimel beginnes was weisen neuf kelim. Either the 3 levels that he counts refers to the 3 levels of kapara corresponding to the 3 levels in kelim, kipirish ad marazokin in Bavli, the pshat according to the Alter Rebbe in the Bavli. Zene verbunden, so this pshat is connected mit the gimel beginnes was an merames of iris, to the other pshat, which is the Yerushalmi, the 3 levels of kapara that correspond to 3 levels of iris. So either we're speaking about Kalim or we're speaking about Eiris that seem to be very different. But nevertheless, there's a connection between the Kapara, whether we refer to the Kalim in the Kapara or the Eiris in the Kapara. The be it in them. So the explanation for this we can understand based on the following. Wegen der Mispar von Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim, regarding the number of the 13 attributes of mercy of Hashem, bringt in Pardes zwei Pirushim. So in the Pardes, he brings two meanings. What's the significance of this number 13? Aleph, one pshat he says is, der Mispar von Yud, so first the number 10, weist of the Esses Spheres da Atzilus, refers to the 10 spheres of the worlds of Atzilus. Und the Minyan Gimel, and then the other three levels here, of Tlas, Roshei Roshin, Shalamayla Matzilus. That refers to three levels that are the heads of the heads. In other words, it's a level that's the three levels that are above Atzilus. And that's the 13 attributes of mercy, drawing from a very high place, which is even above Atzilus. Beis, but then there's another pshat here, what these 13 attributes of mercy refer to. Yud is the Esses Spheres, the Yud is the 10 spheres of Atzilus, like we said before. Und Gimel, the Gimel Eilim is Biyah Shalamatam Atzilus. The other three refers actually to drawing it down into the three worlds of Bri, Yitzir, and Asir that are below Atzilus. So regarding the 13 attributes of mercy, we have two interpretations here, whether the 3 is above Atzilus, or the 3 refers to bringing it down below Atzilus. Und die zwei Pirushim, so the Rabbi here now parenthetically adds that these two interpretations sind masim zu die zwei Biyurim Anal in Gimel and Dalet. It also fits with the two explanations that we said before regarding Gimel and Dalet, whether Gimel is above Dalet or Gimel is below Dalet. The Esses Spheres da Atzilus teilen sich in Dalet Beginnes Kanal. So we already said before that the 10 spheres of Atzilus are divided into 4 categories: Chachma, Bina, Zah, and Malchus. So the Dalet refers to the 10 spheres. It's leiten ersten Pirish, as mit Gimel wird gemeint, it las Roshi Roshin Shalamaylam Atzilus. According to the first pshat that we're saying here, that the number 3 refers to the heads of heads, which is above Atzilus. Kumtais, as Gimel is Hechef von Dalet. So this will fit with the pshat that we said before, that 3 is above Dalet. 3 is the Eiris, which is above Dalet, which is Kalim. Und leiten zweiten Pirish, according to the second pshat that we're saying here, is Gimel, which is Eilam is Biyah. Gimel refers to bringing it down from the 10 spheres of Atzilus into the lower 3 worlds of Biyah, Niedriger von Dalet. So that fits with the pshat that we said before, that the 3 is lower than the Dalet, that the 3 refers to the Kalim, which is lower than the 4, which refers even to the Eiris, that's higher than the Kalim. Okay, so that's parenthetically, we could see how the two pshatim we said before regarding the number 3 is connected to the two pshatim over here we have regarding the 3 and the 13 attributes of mercy. State of them in Bechsidis. Now regarding these two interpretations, regarding the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim, which seem to be opposites, whether it speaks about above Atzilus or below Atzilus, so it says in Chassidus, as loy pligi, there's no argument here, klal at all. Ki shayrish, gimel eilim is biyah, the source of the lower worlds of biyah, where the revelation of godliness comes down lower. Heim mi gimel roshei roshim dafke sheheim l'mayla matzilus. The source of this is from a place which is even higher than Atzilus, and therefore it's able to break out of the world of Atzilus and come down to a lower place of biyah. So the fact that the Gimel of the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim on one hand is higher than Atzilus, that's really the source of the other pshat, which is the fact that it's drawn down to a lower place, to Bria, Yitzira, and even to Asiyah. So these two are connected. That's the pshat that it says regarding the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachmim. So we can apply this also over here regarding the two pirushim, regarding the Chiluke Kapara, whether we're counting the Chiluke Kapara of the Eiris or the Chiluke Kapara of the Kalim. So based on this it comes out as the pirushim shebebchines gimel, the two interpretations regarding the number of gimel weist of kalim, whether the gimel refers to kalim, and gimel weist of eiris, or whether the gimel refers to eiris. Zeneshayich zelazeh are really related one to another, and the adarab, on the contrary, one is a result of the other. Amitis inyana oir. Where do you have real revelation that comes from an unlimited place that's above Atzilus? Was is in ganzen Hechef and Kalim, that's completely removed from any level of Kalim and therefore could be drawn down even lower into the Kalim. Zenen di tlas roshi roshin shalamaylam Atzilus. That's when you draw from a level of revelation that's higher than the world of Atzilus. Und der Oir net men dafke durch beginnes Gimel shamayre ala Kalim shalamatam Atzilus. And therefore, in order to get this revelation of such a high place that's completely higher than any limitation, that's able to come down to the lowest place, even into the Kelim of Atzilus. Rabbi concludes the Inyan over here. Kishem v'di gimel olam is biyah zene verbunden mit ditlas roshi roshen shalamaylam Atzilus. So just as we said here, that the three lower worlds of biyah are connected to the levels that are even above Atzilus, by the Gimel Chiluke Kapara. The same is true regarding the three categories of Kapara. Vasinyanam is Kapara, Tzuan Neshama Beguf Dafka. As we said before, it's specifically the atonement that's brought to the Neshama when it's in a physical body in this world. Was the Rebbe is Rabbi ben Azariah, and it Kaila b'zeh Chilul Hashem Kanal. And therefore Rabbi ben Azariah does not include Chilul Hashem, which is only for the Neshama, not for the Guf. As is eine verbunden mit der Darge, was ist Heche von die Dalet beginnes an Neshama, Nefer Shuruch Neshama Chai. So this kapara that a person can draw down to a lower place, even into his guf, into his body, is because he's drawing from a higher place from the neshama that's even higher than the four levels of nefesh, ruach, neshama, and chai. Nar viziz mufshetes ma'aguf. He draws from the highest place of the neshama, makif harachaik, a place that's very far. Yechide, the essence, the yechida of the neshama, biz viziz eins mit yachid, which is completely united with Hashem, the only one. Nitzutz nivre mit nitzutz beire kanal, the spark of the neshama, which is created with the Eibishter himself, kavayachal. And the reason is, varim dafke, durch der Aveda von a neshama lamate in a guf. It's specifically the Aveda that a Yid does here below with his neshama in a guf in this world, on kiyam at Torah mitzvahs, begashmi is dafke. When a Yid fulfills Torah mitzvahs physically, or kanal, as we explained before, as eich mitzvahs at Chuva, darf getan werden, that the mitzvah of Chuva, like all other mitzvahs, has to be fulfilled, vi alle mitzvahs, neshama is beguf dafke, specifically in a body. So it's specifically through this Aveda that one accomplishes an aliyah in the neshama. It brings an elevation for the neshama, hecher viziz given, farir yiride, even higher than the level that the neshama was on before it descended into this world, hecher from bechinas tahayrehi, even higher than the level of tahayrehi, which is the world of Atzilus. So therefore we see over here that the two pirushim that we said before regarding the Eiris and the Kelim is reflected in the Aveda of Chuva of a Yid, that dafka the Chuva that a Yid does physically in this world is the highest Aveda and connects him to the highest level of his neshama, even higher than the neshama was Lamaila when it was in the world of Atzilus.